This is the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
Well, hey there, welcome in. It is the first day of November already, if you can believe that. Welcome to the Chris Stigall Show podcast. Thanks a lot for downloading this show today. I appreciate you. Coming up, good one. Congressman Scott Perry of the House Freedom Caucus. We have not talked with him. He runs it. Scott Perry is now in charge of a group that was founded by Jim Jordan, and we know that Jim Jordan was passed over as Speaker of the House, we were told, because some 20-plus moderates didn't like that he was a Freedom Caucus founder. So what does the chair of the Freedom Caucus today think of the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson? He has some interesting things to say. I think you'll want to hear. Our friend Julie Kelly, who is covering all things Trump and Trump trial, as well as J6. She does outstanding work at Substack. She's going to be with us. So I want you to know that, yes, I'm going to get into issues and important stuff today, but I have some personal items that I'd like to get off my chest first, and it starts with Panera. Just hang with me for a little bit. I'll get there. Now, the first thing I want you to do, though, if you buy your own health insurance, if you pay out of pocket for your own health insurance, I want to talk to you. Are you saving the amount of money that you could be saving by getting the best deal on your health insurance rates? I'm talking about the premiums you pay every month. You may not know. You may think, well, this is as good as I get, or you met with a broker who told you, here, go with these people, or you get it through work and you just think, well, it's hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a month to cover me or my family or my employees. That's just the way it's going to be. Does it have to be, though? usmedicalplan.com. That's the website, usmedicalplan.com. My friend John Ruhlman runs usmedicalplan.com, or call him today and his team at 877-410-4321. When you do, you'll speak to John or a member of his team, and you tell them, here's what I pay for every month to cover me or my spouse or my family or my colleagues or the people that work for me. Here's what I spend a month. And then quickly they will run the numbers against all the 80-plus different companies they work against and with, rather, I should say. They'll run it against those numbers, and they'll say, look, we can't beat the price you're paying. Or they'll say, here's a plan that does everything yours is doing, or in most cases, here's a plan that's doing more than what your plan is doing and costs you 30 to 60% less. How's that sound? 30 to 60% less a month out of your household budget or your business's budget, or if you're on a fixed income, your fixed income, saving 30 to 60%. Isn't that worth a couple of minutes to call? John is the title sponsor of this show. I've partnered with him because I believe in what he does. I know personally the amount of money he has saved small business owners and families. So I hope you give him a minute. 877-410-4321 or usmedicalplan.com. My daughter, who's my youngest, is she tried with a couple of her friends to squeeze out one last year. She has officially hit the illegitimate age for, some of you might argue that she's already hit it and well past it. She's 15. Her friends are 14. And I would argue 8th grade was probably pushing it. She's now entered her freshman year of high school, and she really, really, really wanted to eke out one more year of pumpkin carving and running around the neighborhood and collecting candy. And so I said, well, okay, if you want, that's fine. Leave me out of it, but if you want, that's fine. Of course, Mom got involved. She carved the pumpkins, and she did so the last night we had a whole party at the house with the girls. I think we were the last house of teenagers to hold out, because it seemed that a lot of other houses were no longer interested in participating. My daughter was calling around shopping to other teenage friends' houses, and many of their parents said, knock it off. No, you're done. Christine and I are softies. Christine loves a good holiday party or an excuse to do something festive. So she said, well, if you want to have a couple of the girls over and you guys want to run around the neighborhood, collect some candy, then we'll come back and we'll bake and do some Halloween stuff and carve pumpkins and all of that. So they had a nice fun night. But I think last night we officially celebrated the last of our Halloween activities, at least with kids last night. That was our final. We put it to bed. It's all over now, so I'll have to live vicariously through you from now on.
Yeah, no, it's unfortunately, but she's not wrong. Freshman in high school is officially the last year you can trick or treat.
And I think she's already too old. I think freshman's probably pushing it. Like she's old enough now where the kids show up and the adults kind of look at them like, what are you trying to pull? You know, they kind of look like I will say teen girls can pull it off better than teen boys. Teen boys just start to look like dopey young men. You know, like they need to shave. And they show up with a pillowcase. Can I have some candy? You know, and they don't even wear a costume. They just expect, if they've got a bag or some kind of container, that you'll dump your candy in. There have been a couple of times I've given the skunk eye to teenage boys like that. Girls will get away with it because generally they'll try to, and the girls did, to their credit, they still dressed up and did the costumes and everything. So at least they tried. They put effort into it. Not like greedy teenage boys who just want candy for showing up.
That's exactly, no, it's teen boys are greedy. They show up, like every one of them is dressed as like a bum, you know, like we haven't been there. Just like, what are you? What are you doing? So they don't put any effort into the costume, and then they're trying to put their whole hand into the bucket. Just like, yo, there's kids that need candy, bro. Come on.
Do you know that I got a text or two yesterday from people? This is really becoming a phenomenon on this show, and I didn't intend for it to. I almost never talk about this stuff because it's not even particularly, you know, when we get into civil litigation and people suing other people, typically that's just not, it's kind of like police stuff. I don't talk a lot about it, but every now and again, something kind of piques my interest. It's weird enough that I think, all right, I'll address it for a minute. It has become the bane of my existence, Fast Eddie. You know what I'm talking about. Panera.
Oh, my.
I am getting, when I tell you, I am starting to get daily correspondence from eyewitnesses inside Paneras. Like, I'm getting Panera spies now that are going into this store and snapping pictures of the display of the charged lemonade and texting it to me, arguing with me that this is not a well-displayed enough contents on this drink and that this girl has a point. If you for some reason missed this, and folks, listen, I understand. There's other news going on. Don't misunderstand. I'm just telling you this is my life. And as it's my show and I'm a benevolent dictator, I can begin the show by kvetching a little bit here. I think that's the Yiddish word for bitching. So stay with me for a minute. Last week, I bring up the story of a 21-year-old University of Pennsylvania student who has a heart condition, apparently a fairly serious one, a rare one that I had not heard of before, but it's one that makes you highly vulnerable to stimulants, like caffeine and sugar and other things, apparently. I forget exactly what it was called, but she's 21 years old, and apparently since being a little kid, she's always been warned, essentially, your heart's a ticking time bomb, and if you're not careful, stimulants could cause you to go into cardiac arrest or something. I'm paraphrasing, but that was basically my gist of it. Have I got that about right? She's always known she had a heart condition?
Yes. Yeah. It's, well, you know if you have a health condition like that.
She knew. I mean, like, she was well aware. There were things she could not drink. She allegedly goes into a Panera and pours herself a charged lemonade. Now, there was some debate for a while as to whether or not this was a drink that was made behind the counter. I wrongly assumed initially in talking about this that this was a drink made behind the counter. In fact, it is not. Panera spies all across the land have been texting me photos from inside their local Panera just to disprove Stigall, because that's what people in this audience love to do, correct the host. There is no greater thrill for people in this audience than to correct the host. I understand. It so rarely gets to happen. I even had some spell checkers on the Harump Society this week. I mean,
oh, man.
No, it's been a rough one.
Tough.
It's been a rough one for your host. But nevertheless, I soldier on. And so I'm getting these texts that say, Stigall, look at this. Look at this sign. So I get the first one I get is a picture of the machine. And they say, you see, it's not made behind the counter. It's one of those constantly brewing, effervescing, bubbling machines. Serve yourself next to the soda inside Panera. So you were wrong, Stigall. It's not served behind the counter. It's a serve yourself thing in the lobby or whatever you call it. Okay, strike one. I'm wrong. And then I said, well, it's called charged lemonade. And there was some debate about whether or not the contents, the sugar, the caffeine in the thing, was well displayed enough. Well, the photos that have been sent to me since, now I don't know if these are newly added or not, but I've had several of these from people who have shown me that this is, again, either since or it's always been, that there are these little placards hanging on the charged lemonade distribution site. And in fact, there's 3 different in this last picture that I got. Charged lemonade, mango citrus, charged lemonade, strawberry lemon mint, and then something called charged splash blood orange. These 3 things sitting side by side that you can help yourself to. Now, see, I've made the argument from the jump that when you see something labeled charged, my takeaway instantly is, well, that means it's different than regular lemonade, right? At bare minimum, isn't that your first thing? At a minimum, you walk in and you see charged lemonade and you say, well, that's different than regular lemonade for some reason.
Chris, even as your producer, it's not that I have to agree with you. If I saw charged lemonade, yes, it's probably like, okay, why? Why is it charged? What makes it quote unquote charged? I agree with you 110% on that.
Now, do you know that I got a text from somebody yesterday who said, and I kid you not, well, Stigall, I completely disagree with you. I don't think that's anybody that would see charged lemonade. You know what they'd think. I said, no, do tell. Well, they'd think extra lemon. What? Kid you not, this guy with a dead straight face told me that charged lemonade to him means it's extra lemony. I feel like I've hit my head at this point. Now, it's like everybody wants to argue with me about this. The punchline to this story is this 21-year-old woman goes into Panera, serves herself up a big charged lemonade, and is dead, I guess, within 24 hours. And her family claims it's because she has this heart condition and she drank this unmarked charged lemonade and nobody warned her and there wasn't a full enough warning. And so now people are sending me signs of these, what do you call them? Serve yourself tanks of the charged lemonade, and hanging on them are these signs. And it is, yes, it's in tiny print. I wouldn't say like it's a huge neon sign hanging above it, but right below, it says strawberry lemon mint, naturally flavored, plant-based, and clean, with about as much caffeine as our dark roast coffee. With about as much caffeine as our dark roast coffee. And then it lists 20 fluid ounces is 280 calories and 260 milligrams of caffeine. Or 30 fluid ounces is 430 calories and 360 milligrams of caffeine. So that's what the little sign says. See, that's what it looks like there, Fast Eddie. That's hanging. Okay. That's hanging on every little machine that distributes the beverage. Now, you zoom out here and you look at the 3 of them sitting there, and granted, you can't really read the text underneath, right? That describes all of the calorie contents and the milligrams of caffeine. You'd have to really get down on it. That's fair if you're standing a foot away or so. You can see that it says the types of drink, but it doesn't really tell you the contents underneath unless you get down and look at it. But again, let's go back to charged for a minute. Does charged cause you to stop and look? Go, what is this I'm about to drink?
Me, yes. Yes, I would look at a charged lemonade, because maybe I don't want that. Like, maybe they infuse it with something that I don't want. Like, if I just want lemonade, then I don't know if I want it charged or not.
So I've had people argue that, no, this is serve yourself, first of all, which makes it reckless strike number 1. No, charged does not mean there's extra stuff in it. It just means it's extra flavor. All right, no. Strike number 3 is it's not well displayed enough, the contents in the thing. The type is too tiny. It seems there are many members of this audience, Fast Eddie, who are cheering for the ambulance-chasing lawyer in the Panera lawsuit. That's what I've gathered. There are many in this audience who are excited And then, on top of all of this, I'm now getting emails from people who I think are wanting to hop aboard a class action lawsuit. That's what I've gathered. I'm getting stories at random from people submitting their own personal tales of woe and heroism doing battle with charged lemonade at the Panera. No kidding. I am getting emails from people telling me, I went into Panera to have myself a sandwich at lunch, and I had one of those charged lemonades, and all I'll tell you is I couldn't sleep that entire night. I was wide awake until 7 a.m. the next morning. I didn't know it was so caffeinated. Story after story like that. I went in and I had a charged lemonade for dinner, and I didn't go to bed till next Friday. It's like that stuff. So I don't know. Are people setting the table, Fast Eddie, that maybe this lawyer, this shyster lawyer in Philadelphia, if he gets his way and sues Panera and scores a big payout for this family who lost their daughter, tragically, do you think there are others who now think, hey, I too have been duped by Panera's charged lemonade, mislabeling, and perhaps maybe I can get a piece of the action? Is that maybe what members of this audience are concluding?
I think so, Chris, and I think that's indicative of this is changing the course of history. Like I said when we first talked about it, I think this is the warning hot moment that people are looking for. This is class action, warning hot, warning charged. Here we go. I'm
telling you, folks, we're at the tip of the spear, even if inadvertently. Just know that this show has inadvertently swerved into the new caution coffee is hot story of this generation. Many of us, most of us remember the story. You remember where you were when you found out a jury awarded a woman tens of millions of dollars for spilling hot McDonald's coffee in her lap. And when much of the country said, well, coffee is hot, no, a jury of her peers said she's due tens of millions of dollars because the cup wasn't properly labeled coffee is hot. And McDonald's from that day forward had to start labeling the coffee, caution, extremely hot, just to make sure when you drove to the drive-thru and collected your cup from McDonald's, you knew that the contents of the coffee inside was in fact hot. Folks, we may be in one of these generational litigious moments where you could be a part of the fun. If you or a loved one have consumed a charged beverage from Panera, it doesn't cost a thing to call me. If you
forget,
have you or someone you know recently visited a Panera?
This is gonna. Are you tired of seeing the Camp Lejeune commercials? Get ready for the Panera charged lemonade commercials because they're coming.
That's right. That's right. Have you or a loved one lived on Camp Lejeune since 1986? No, now it's going to be, have you or a loved one had Panera since 19... If you or someone you love has dined at a Panera since 2002, chances are you or someone you know has consumed charged lemonade, and you could be on the hook for a handsome reward. Oh, boy. So I just, excuse me, I had to get that off my chest because I thought maybe it was here or there. I'd get a note or two. This has been ongoing now. We've done 2 shows on it so far. I'm now into my 3rd show. This probably promises more because there are people in this audience who won't let it die. They're taking the side of the attorney like they're actively. I was a little shocked, I must say. Now, listen, there's a dead woman, and that's tragic. In all sincerity, a 21-year-old woman, a beautiful girl whose life is taken early. That's awful. But again, she's had a chronic heart condition her entire life, and she's not to drink heavily stimulated things. And she goes in and has a charged lemonade, and they claim, the family claims, after her death, that Panera is responsible for her death. And look, I'm not a doctor and whatever. I'm not even impugning the family here. I'm just arguing that the attorney who's now moved in, one of the descriptions of Panera is that it was reckless or malicious. And I'm thinking to myself, in what universe do you or I live that Panera is trying to, murder you? Or subversively harm people or hide? Like, what's the angle? Seriously, for just a minute, what's the angle of Panera trying to hide from you the sugar or caffeine contents of the beverage? What's the angle? Sincere question. Like, I get it if, let's talk about tobacco for a minute, you know? The big tobacco companies over the years have gone through litigation and litigation. Now, if you go into a convenience store, you'll see the sign, big as day. R.J. Reynolds must now tell you that they willfully produce cigarettes that caused addictive properties, and you are forever hooked because of their dubious... I mean, like, courts have raked big tobacco over the coals to the point that there's basically got to be like a tobacco official, you know, behind every counter now greeting you going, you know, we've designed these to destroy you and kill you, right? Anyway, here you go, 25, whatever, a carton. I mean, they have made big tobacco basically with every purchase just admit we're trying to kill you. And we could get into that. I'm not going to. But long story short, big tobacco is forced to say, we purposely created a product to make it more addictive to you, knowing all the while it was harmful to you. That's what courts have forced big tobacco to say. Now, I would say... I know I'm getting into it here. I would say that there's got to be some level of self-awareness that sucking on sticks of things that cause smoke to come down into your lungs, even if you have no medical training whatsoever. I mean, I love a cigar, but I'm not going to try to talk myself or anyone else into believing, or my nephews. You know, like my little 6-year-old nephew the other day said, Uncle Chris, why do you smoke cigars and not cigarettes? And for half a second, I was thinking to myself, oh, I don't want the kid to think smoking cigars is better, right? So, you know, I get it. I'm under no illusion that smoking a cigar is any better. But my point is, I know, because I don't want my little 6-year-old to emulate and 6-year-old nephew, I don't want him to emulate the behavior. I know what I'm doing. I'm an adult man. I don't do it all the time. I get notes from people that say, I wish you'd stop those cigars. And if I smoked them every day, which I don't, but if I did. So my point is, there's got to be some level of personal accountability when you ingest things into your body. Is there not? I guess basically, I don't understand anybody who puts anything in their mouth and then later goes, well, you didn't tell me what was in that. Since the dawn of man, who just picks something up and goes, why not? And shoves it down their gullet, and then later says, anybody know what that was I just ate? And if you are that person, maybe you deserve not to be alive, like it's a Darwinian thing. Who does that, Fast Eddie?
I can't think of any reason to not question anything you do harmful to yourself.
Or just in 2023, in general, who ingests anything in the year 2023 and doesn't know what's in it? Who? And if you do, it's the responsible of the person who served it to you? If something negative happens to you. Like, I have to know the health makeup of every person who might consume the thing I made? That's my responsibility now. So, I don't know, Chris's Kitchen. I open up a new corner shop. And I start baking a product every day, and it's selling like crazy. And then one woman comes in from, I don't know, Rhode Island on her way passing through. And she said, oh, my cousin told me all about Chris's confections. I can't wait to dive in. And she swallows it and drops dead in the parking lot. And then her family says, you didn't tell my Aunt Martha that there's sugar in your confections or whatever. And I go, well, no, but she didn't ask. And I assumed you knew. Like, it's this weird new thing where stores have to go, restaurants in particular, the expectation now is there must be a flashing neon sign above every food and drink item. The following contents may kill you if you have the following conditions. Like, what? Is now every restaurant supposed to be the FDA, or what are we asking here exactly? I don't know, Fast Eddie. I've just gotten enough traffic on the charged lemonade story. I'm now, it's gone from something I thought was sort of mildly interesting to now I feel like I'm fighting over it.
Chris, that's amazing to me, just amazing. But yes, I think you're correct to conclude that there's...
People want a piece of the action is what I think.
Yeah, this law firm does not lose, so they will win. And from that will be, I think, enrichment for some.
I don't go to Panera enough. I think I've been once or twice in the past year. I don't drink the lemonade when I go, certainly. Although maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe I need to hire an attorney and really reconsider when I go in there and get my bacon turkey bravo. Maybe I did have the charged lemonade, or at least I was intrigued by the signage. It wooed me over, summoned me like a caffeinated siren song. And in an uncontrolled fit, I chugged a gallon of it.
Gallon?
That's right.
Wow.
So I've been doubly harmed. I've been doubly harmed, really. I was very thirsty. It was a hot summer day. I was going to reach for water, but I said, no, charged lemonade sounds better. Little did I know that would keep me up until June the following year.
Did you yourself drink a gallon of charged lemonade?
Your Honor! You see, I'm picturing an old Southern courtroom, a Gregory Peck type, Atticus Finch.
Oh,
All right, so that's it. That's all. I've gotten it off my chest. You wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe it if you saw my email box and my text exchanges with people. Everybody wants to argue with me that Panera's at fault for this woman's death. Again, I set the woman's health condition and her family and their grieving aside. That's sad and tragic it is. That is a separate, compartmentalized story from your responsibility and mine to know what we're consuming before consuming it. And when there's question or when there's debate, my default position is not, Panera's to blame. No, it's you for not asking enough questions about what you're about to swallow. I'm sorry, I don't think this is even close. You don't, but it's right out there. I could just serve myself. Well, yes. What does that mean? I hate beets. And at every salad bar I go to, there's beets. Just because they're sitting there on the salad bar and I hate them like they make me gag when I see them. If I just start scooping beets on my plate, swallow them, and then vomit in the restaurant, I can't blame the restaurant and go, those beets were out for anyone to consume that wanted them. But don't you kind of know what beets do to you, though? Some might say, well, they were out. This is the new metric. If you serve yourself and the restaurant doesn't tell you expressly what's in it, then they're responsible for harming you. What are we, cattle? Wandering around, just helping ourselves to whatever we see? Drives me crazy. I thought it meant extra lemon. In what universe does someone see charged lemonade and thinks that means extra lemony? Fast Eddie. All right, I'm sorry. It's my prerogative, my show. Hey there, it's Chris, back on the phone with my dentist and friend, Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental in Broomall, Pennsylvania, just off the Blue Route with new technology. You have not just new associates, but they brought new technology into the business to make it a little easier for patients.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time in dentistry. We have now introduced a three-dimensional x-ray called a CBCT scan in our office, which allows us to diagnose and things earlier for patients. My daughter is placing a lot of implants in the past that referred out. It's now being done in-house. And we also, we've been using dental or computer scanners for taking impressions for crowns for about the last 2 to 3 years. We now have introduced the next step, which is a milling machine, and we can now make crowns in the office. Things can be completed in the same day as opposed to having a temporary crown put on and 3 weeks later coming back and having a permanent crown put on. It's really a game changer, and it's a time saver for our patients to not have to make multiple visits to the office.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com. I was told during 9/11 and in the ensuing days and weeks after 9/11 that those that hijacked those planes and killed 3,000 Americans did not speak for and were not the entirety of all Muslims. How many times were you told that? How many times have you heard that over the years?
All throughout school.
Yeah, they are not all Muslims. So don't mistake the Islamists who slaughtered 3,000 Americans. They are not, they don't speak for all Muslims. Of course, there are hundreds of, maybe billions, I don't know. I can't remember the count of how many people count themselves as Muslim on the globe. There are lots. And there's always been this distinction that there are Islamofascists, the Islamic supremacists, people who wish to kill you if you don't convert to Islam. And then there are much more moderate Muslims, I've been told, who are not that at all. And I haven't studied them theologically. I don't know, but I trust that that's accurate. I've met and talked with many moderate Muslims, or those that claim they are, who are diametrically opposed to the killer converted crowd. Having asked that question, or stipulated that, now let me ask the question, I should say, Fast Eddie. How do you describe Hamas? If somebody asks you, of what branch, of what vein, of what description would you call Hamas? The killer convert crowd or the moderate Muslim crowd?
The killer convert crowd.
Yeah.
Of course.
And so they reside there in Gaza, and the Palestinian people elected them to lead back in the mid-2000s, correct? So is it fair to say, we've gone through this now for weeks, is it fair to say there are peaceful, peace-loving, moderate Palestinians out there who don't want to kill you if you don't convert? Are there those people in the Palestinian territory? I would guess. Probably. I'll just go ahead and stipulate, yes. Is that most of them? Hard to know. But we know they're representative government, and we know that everybody who's marching in the streets here domestically, we keep going through this. I don't want to bore you with it. Are they making a distinction? Save Kamala Harris, to her bizarre credit, the only thing she's ever done that's kind of interesting to me. There's only one Democrat, and it's Kamala Harris of all people, who continues to make the distinction the Palestinian people are not Hamas. Everybody else just talks about Hamas and Israel's attack and Israel striking back at Hamas for slaughtering their civilians. Everyone talks about, have you noticed this now? Everyone's talking about all Muslims. And I want you to pick up on this and notice this because it's important. During 9/11, all of us were told to be very, very careful not to turn into bigots and not to turn anti-Arab, not to turn anti-Muslim. I remember there were stories of Sikhs, beautiful people who wear turbans and the whole thing. They have no affiliation whatsoever with radical Islamists. And, there were stories of poor Sikhs being picked on just simply because they were wearing a headdress or whatever. You don't want that. Naturally, you don't want that. And so the country had to go through this discussion of who's, there's nuance in these things. Have you noticed that suddenly there is no nuance when it comes to Israel defending itself and striking back against Hamas? Have you noticed the nuance is dead, and now all Muslims are in solidarity in standing with Hamas? And they want a ceasefire, and they want Israel to stop right now. They don't want Israel to make another move. All Muslims. This is what I'm told. It's what I read. Swing state Muslims, this is the headline, threaten to tank Biden's reelection if he doesn't call for Gaza ceasefire. You'll remember we started the week with this, talking about Congresswoman Jayapal and much of the squad. They all keep warning. Gretchen Whitmer, the wicked snow queen of Michigan, the governor there, she tripped all over herself in condemning Hamas because she knows her state is full of Muslims. And so now it's like all of a sudden what used to be a, hey, not all Muslims want to slaughter you dead for not being Muslim. Now it's all Muslims stand with Hamas. Isn't that fascinating? Have you heard any reports? Seriously, have you heard any left-wingers, any left-wing media who have cited any Muslims denouncing Hamas? Any? I mean, go ahead. Like, maybe if I Googled, I don't know, Muslims denounce Hamas. I don't know if anything headline-worthy would pop up in the last week. Maybe just would you just Google headline search that for a minute? Google News search, Muslims denounce Hamas. And see if any mainstream headlines generate anything like that. Just off the top of your search, Fast Eddie. Just a fun anecdotal experiment. Not scientific. And not fair to say it hasn't been written anywhere, but I just wondered if any mainstream outlets pop up with anything related to that.
Okay, first news headline from Newsweek: Stop asking Muslims to condemn Hamas. I'll take a picture of that so you know I'm not lying.
Well, good. We didn't even rehearse this. Thank you for driving my point home. And good night, everybody. Newsweek wrote a story that says Muslims shouldn't be asked to condemn Hamas. I see. Now, atheists regularly remind us of the, of history and during, when Christianity was weaponized and people were slaughtered in the name of Christianity. I'm routinely reminded that Christianity has a history of that kind of nastiness, of people invoking their Christian faith as justification for slaughter during the why is the word escaping me? But anyway, of course, there is no Christian today that would ever, if anybody, I can assure you, if anybody ever said they killed on behalf of Christianity, there would be a wholesale campaign to denounce that. Toot sweet from all branches of Christianity, no matter whether they're wacko progressive Christians or Bible-believing Christians. Like me, all of us in solidarity, I'm confident as Christians, would link arms and say, that ain't Christianity. So Newsweek does not expect Muslims to condemn Hamas. Is that right?
Yes, that's the first article.
Interesting. Okay. Any others? Just off the top of the search? I mean, it's fine. That's plenty, by the way. You did great. I mean, you hit a grand slam home run making my point with that one headline, so maybe no more are necessary.
So a local news affiliate, News 25 in Florida, is the second headline. South Florida Muslim community leaders voicing support for people of Palestine, denouncing Hamas.
Denouncing Hamas?
Yep.
So, okay, so they're saying that they're offering support for Palestine and denouncing Hamas in that headline.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
In South Florida.
That's okay, South Florida. Nice distinction there. Fair to say that in your search, there's not a preponderance of news stories or headlines like that, suggesting that there is a denouncing of Hamas by American Muslims? Not finding a ton? And in fact, the first headline you found was, stop asking Muslims to denounce them.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, and fourth down. So, I mean, obviously this is all aggregated. Fourth down, swing state Muslim Americans threaten to vote against Biden, from NBC News.
Well, that's exactly what I have here. That's the same headline. Swing state Muslims threaten to tank Biden's reelection if he doesn't call for Gaza ceasefire. So this is my point. Not only are news outlets now saying all Muslims are exactly the same and they all feel the same way and all of them basically support Hamas, and if they don't, they shouldn't be expected to denounce Hamas. Don't expect them to. Don't ask them to. Oh, I see. So it's too much for an American Muslim to denounce Hamas. Is that right? Too inconvenient, is it? Or, and I don't believe this, I'm just playing devil's advocate for a minute, or all American Muslims stand with Hamas. Now, I know that's not true. I personally know that's not true. I know American Muslims who do not stand with Hamas. I just find it interesting that all mainstream media and Democrats have concluded all Muslims must not be asked about this, and we are to assume that all Muslims stand with Hamas. And that if Biden doesn't knock it off and stop seeming so pro-Israel, all Muslims across the country will stand shoulder to shoulder in solidarity and vote against him. So do you believe that American Muslims are going to go running en masse, assuming Trump's the nominee? American Muslims will run en masse to vote for Trump or not vote if Biden continues to show tacit support for Israel. Do you believe that's true?
I don't.
I don't either. I have a very hard time believing that, but yet the press wants you to continue to believe this, and they're bullying the Democrats into believing this. The Democrat press is trying to coach its fellow Democrats, stop supporting Israel. This is everywhere. Members of the media, the beady-eyed John Kirby with the perfectly coiffed hair and the tortoiseshell glasses and the perfectly pressed pocket square. Humana. He didn't know what to do yesterday when a plant inside the press corps starts saying, giving him the, you're killing my relatives, my loved ones there. When are you going to, Israel just killed a bunch of I've never seen anything like this. Israelis were slaughtered, and there has been a sustained media/Democrat, but I repeat myself, movement in this country to suggest Israel's in the wrong, and anyone in this country who doesn't stand with Hamas is in the wrong. And they've now infiltrated the press briefing room where they're trying to make the beady-eyed weasel go on the defensive on behalf of Hamas. I've never seen it like this before. Take a listen.
Thousands of Palestinian civilians have fallen so far, including 160 of my own relatives. And I'm just wondering, how many Palestinian civilians need to be killed before the United States called for a ceasefire?
First of all, my condolences to you and your family. Are you in touch with some?
Well,
that are
as much as I can.
Not as much as you'd like to be, yeah. But I'm very sorry to hear that. I'm very sorry to hear that. And so I can see this is obviously personal for you. I can tell you it's personal for the president, too.
Okay, and so that's enough. Now, what do we know about White House press briefings? We know that they know every person in that room. We know that they personally approve people's attendance or not, and we also know that they decide who they're going to call on or not. There was a decision made to call on this person. I don't know who the reporter is, but the first thing he says is he personally has lost 160 relatives. And what are you? What is the White House doing? How many Palestinians need to be killed before the United States calls for a ceasefire, John Kirby? John Kirby, I would argue, knew this question was coming, knew it was going to be asked. And so now what do you do? What conclusion can you draw from that then? Darker. Gets a little darker, doesn't it? If the White House knows who that is and knows they're going to ask that question and calls on them to allow them the platform to entertain the question, as Tony Schaefer said yesterday, feels like a little doublespeak, doesn't it? You see what's happening? Now all American Muslims stand in solidarity, we're told by the press and the Democrats. And if Biden and the White House doesn't back off this thing and demand Israel back off this thing, all American Muslims are very, very mad and upset at Biden, and Biden has the blood of Muslims globally on his hands if he doesn't inject himself and stop this right now. I don't remember a member of the media ever raising their hand in a time of another war. For instance, when was a Ukrainian reporter allowed in to say, when will you stop Russia from killing all of my relatives? Has that ever happened to your knowledge? Have we ever had a Ukrainian reporter in the White House press briefing room that you remember?
Not that I can recall.
Yeah, I don't either. Because that doesn't happen. That person was allowed in, and that person was allowed to ask that question for a reason. Now, I don't know the heads and hearts of the people who made the decision, but the decision was made. So you can draw from that whatever you like. Serious question. Are all these people on college campuses MAGA voters? I'm asking. You seeing the red hats? Because that's who used to be responsible for all this anti-Semitism. Remember the tiki torches? And that's what we were told the entirety of Trump's time in the White House was anti-Semitism was on the rise. Even though Ivanka is Jewish, his son-in-law is Jewish, he officially designated Jerusalem the capital of Israel, which no other president ever did. And the Abraham Accords, I mean, he was the most pro-Israel president that we've ever had. And people told us that it was the MAGA voters who were the anti-Semites running around the country. Just curious, as we're now seeing it all over the country, how many of these people are voting Trump next year? Pay attention, ladies and gentlemen. Pay attention to how quickly we're all led around by the nose with media narratives. It's never more blatant and on display than it is right now. I would just point out to you again, and then I'll move off of it. There is something inorganic about what we're watching. Yes, there was a massive sudden slaughter of Israelis by Hamas. And yes, Israel is now basically delivering an F around and find out response to that. You, I suppose, can be of a mind that war, I don't know. I'm trying to take the dove position here. You can't hug with nuclear arms or whatever. I don't know what your dove position is on this thing, but I think most of us understand the sentiment. When you're sucker punched, you strike back. Hamas is a cancer. Hamas is metastasized, and as far as Israel's concerned, we're not going to carve out half the cancer. We're going to go in and take out all the cancer. That's Israel's official position. And I think most normal people understand that position. We're now being told suddenly that there's this huge organic presence in the United States of people who believe taking out half the cancer is enough. Now stop. And furthermore, that if the Democrats don't take that position, if Joe Biden doesn't take that position, carve out half the cancer and stop, they won't support him anymore. They won't vote for him next year. I mean, I don't care about that, neither here nor there. It's just an interesting position. And where's it come from? All the marching in the streets, the college campus stuff. There's something in common. It just, if you back away, here again, if you back away and you kind of reconsider where we've been for the last years, nothing happens organically. It all happens in a vacuum, meaning George Floyd, BLM riots, right? The transgenderism stuff just kind of exploded out of nowhere during COVID. DEI. Now this, the pro-Palestinian stuff, at a volume, at a level we've not ever seen in this country before. It just came out of nowhere after Israel is attacked by Hamas. It's not always in the streets. It came after Israel was attacked. So do you notice that there's always like this domestic, violent reaction to events in this country quickly that cause most normal, peaceful people to go, what the hell's going on? Where did this come from? Have you noticed that trend, Fast Eddie?
It's almost immediate.
Yes.
And it happens so fast that I think you and I may have talked about this last week off air. I don't know where it comes from and how quickly it comes until you actually stop and take the 30,000-foot view, as you say, and it's like, oh my gosh, yes, that was only 2 years ago. Yes, that was only last week.
These thuggish street presentations, the looting, the rioting, the chanting, the marching, this stuff just bubbles up seemingly out of nowhere. It has to be organized naturally. And I just remind you again that America's top organizer, the man we used to call president, is remarkably silent yet again in the midst of all this upheaval. The commander in organizing, Barack Hussein Obama, I think is the tip of every spear when you're questioning, where does this stuff come from? How does it happen? It's the organizational principles of a Marxist, the former president, who I believe still operates very much every day in the shadows of this administration that we're pretending is Biden's, and I think helps domestically organize so much of the civil domestic unrest we see today. He's taught people how to quickly grow these seemingly out-of-nowhere protest events. And so normal, peace-loving people who are going about their day and going to work and taking their kids to school, you look around and you go, where the hell did all this come from? I mean, you see the polls, and you see the polls say that most Americans support Israel. And yet news media would have you believe that every Muslim in the country supports Hamas. And, I don't know, most of the Democrat Party supports Hamas. And media is constantly covering these people on campuses. You'd think every college kid in the country supports Hamas. And you'd think to yourself, well, how is this possible? When did it happen that Israel stopped being one of our greatest allies? Well, the answer is they still are, and they always have been, and nothing has changed. But the inorganic way in which all of this has been organized and quickly thrust upon us all is something that you and I have to be profoundly aware of, because it changes mentalities quickly. It silences normal people, and it starts to make you think you're alone. It starts to make it's designed to isolate you. It's designed to make you think, well, maybe I have the minority point of view here. Maybe looting and rioting is the norm. Maybe the pro-Palestinian position is the norm. Maybe allowing young children to have their genitals cut off before they hit puberty is the norm. Maybe I should shut up and pipe down. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm on the fringe now. No, you're not. No, we're not. But it's all designed to make you feel that way. Just so you know, I think it's important every now and again that we take stock. There have been some listeners to this podcast for a while that are great supporters and friends, and now they've decided to jump in and become sponsors. I'm proud to have them aboard. They're guys that operate a website called gulagamerica.com. They try to have a little fun and a little irreverence with the very real state of affairs we find ourselves in these days. In fact, regularly when I post something on social media, you'll see them come in and they'll say something like, "That's Gulag America." Well, that's a brand name. That's actually what they've been trying to frame so much of what we're living through, what they call Gulag America. They've been great supporters of the Haram Society as well, founders, as a matter of fact. I'm so pleased and proud to have them as sponsors. GulagAmerica.com. Go to their website, your online home for what they call apparel with attitude. I think you're going to dig it. If you're unhappy with the direction the country is headed, I think that speaks for itself for most of this audience. If you're dismayed that 3/4 of Democrats and half of Republicans want the government to restrict hate speech, potentially meaning shows like this one, podcasts like this one, that's Gulag America. Go to gulagamerica.com. They're the shop for you. They have everything from American classics like Gadsden flag shirts that say "Don't Tread on Me," to original designs ripped from the headlines, like the recent edition that reads, "Mask me once, shame on you. Mask me twice, shame on me." Pretty good. That and so many more. Great shirts, great apparel. GulagAmerica.com. Great supporters of this show, great American patriots and friends and founding members of the Haram Society. Honored to have them aboard. GulagAmerica.com. As they say, Gulag America, it's not our wish, it's our warning. GulagAmerica.com. Welcome aboard, fellas. You blink and you miss it already. October over. November started. You know, for a lot of people, this is the unofficial beginning of Christmas, Fast Eddie. I saw many women, particularly yesterday on social media, saying, "Time to flip the calendar. Time to put up the Christmas decorations." Some people don't even wait. I mean, I know the stores have already started selling the Christmas stuff, but November 1st is the... My daughter declared it so. She said, "I can't wait to go to bed tonight." I said, "Why?" She said, "Because tomorrow morning, Christmas season begins." Forget about Thanksgiving. They've just completely shoved that aside now. Deck the halls.
I don't agree with that, but I do understand as an adult for the first time that the Christmas time is valuable, and I totally get it when the calendar flips. It's just like it's Christmas time, because before you know it, it's going to be the 25th of December.
Do you know the only reason I fall for that a little bit now is because as I've gotten older, and everybody experiences this as you age, you feel like you just put the damn decorations away. You can remember, I've said this before, you can actively remember where you put things. Like you feel like you just packed the box and put it back on the shelf, and then it's like you're getting it down and you're like, didn't I just do this? So your temptation is to say, let's decorate earlier so at least we can enjoy it for a while. Like, it's amazing to me that we ever waited as late as we did as a family. We used to. I mean, my mother, it was, she demanded we wait until the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. That was tradition growing up as a kid. My mother said, not until Santa shows up at the Thanksgiving Day Parade do we decorate. But the foot on the gas pedal, my neighbors had lights on their house 2 weeks ago for Christmas. So,
yeah.
Anyway, here we are. I don't know about Congressman Scott Perry. Do you guys decorate there at the office, Congressman Perry? Do you decorate at the house? He is he's the head of the Freedom Caucus in Washington, D.C., as you know, and represents Pennsylvania's 10th Congressional District. Good morning, Congressman.
Of course. Good morning. Of course we decorate. We've got 2 young daughters, and it's a big deal. We like to celebrate the birth of our Savior. But I will tell you, we also like to celebrate Thanksgiving and all our blessings that come from the good Lord, and that the real story of what happened on the first Thanksgiving. So we don't
rush it.
That one for this. No, we do not rush it. But I will say this. I put some lights up last winter for Christmas in the cold of the winter. And, Christmas came and went, and I thought, well, I should go get those lights down. And then it became spring, and I said, well, there they are, but I got this other work to do because it's springtime now, and you only get so many of these nice days. And then, of course, we were into high summer and same thing, and then busy in Congress. And lo and behold, some of my Christmas lights are ready to go. They're already installed. So
you have left. Are you telling me Congressman Scott Perry leaves his Christmas lights up year round?
Well, it's just a couple. And but unfortunately, they never got packed up.
I hope you don't have a homes association, Congressman. They're going to be on you.
No, I live out in the free part of Pennsylvania where I don't have to answer to some jackbooted thugs telling me that my yard is half an inch too long because I didn't get to mow it. Rain, all that stuff. I don't deal with that. Thank goodness. I have had to deal with that in my life, but I got away from that. I like freedom too much for that.
Amen. I'm with you. It's been a bit since we've caught up, and I don't blame you. You kind of had to wait for this whole thing to shake out because who wanted that mess? But it was interesting when it was all said and done. We now have a Speaker of the House named Mike Johnson, and we've talked a lot about him here, obviously, since he became Speaker. The fight was pretty intense for a while. Gates and others would say they feel pretty satisfied here. You see, we got a more conservative speaker when it was all said and done. You just had to trust us and ride along. I read a story, Congressman, that said, it was interesting, it was in Politico, and it said that the moderates of the Republican Party just got exhausted with it and finally threw in and said, all right, fine, Johnson it is. And if that's true, that proves if conservatives hold the line, they can achieve what they want to achieve, it seems to me.
Yeah, there is. I think there is some truth to that. The public pressure, you guys all look foolish up there, and why can't we just agree on someone over at some point? That is a factor. The time is a factor of wearing people down. And of course, it's used against conservatives all the time. Although it doesn't work as well. You got to understand, Chris, there are literally three teams here. So the one team, which I'm going to include all the left, all the Democrats, and they're interested in spending more money. They're not interested in saving 1 cent. They call it investments, and that's where they are. They're not interested in any fight whatsoever that tries to save us from the fiscal insanity and the bankruptcy we're headed to. On the Republican side, there are those that like to talk about that. You played some of the theater in your opener, where the first thing we're going to do is repeal these IRS agents. Of course, that's all theater. We did that, but it goes nowhere in the Senate, and we all know that when we vote on it. But there's two teams on our side, one that literally sees the train wreck coming and is demanding that an end to this status quo exists, and then there's the other one that would like to do it if it's easy, if it's not confrontational, if it can be done between 9 and 5 and on a weekday, then we're up for that. But if it's going to be any trouble, we can't be bothered. And what you're seeing is that is playing out, unfortunately, as a public spectacle, because those of us who believe that there's an urgency that needs to be answered here. There's an urgency to the destruction of our country at a pace and a level that we've never seen under this president, whether it's foreign entanglements, whether it's domestic spending, whether it's domestic policy like the border, the weaponization of the federal government against our citizens. All that cannot wait one more minute. And so we demand a change to the status quo. And if it looks uncomfortable, if it breaches the 9 to 5 narrative, well, too bad. We are just going to and we also know this, Chris, that we are built for this. We are bred for this, and we are literally trained for this. We are conditioned for this. So, and a lot of times in these bills that we have to vote on, people are reluctant to vote no because you're going to be held accountable for shutting the government down. You're going to be held accountable for not passing these must-pass appropriations bills or whatever. Well, once you vote no a couple times, you're like, I lived through it.
The world didn't end. Yeah.
The world didn't end. The sun came up. Babies kept being born. People kept born. People went to work. And I think I can do this again. These other guys and gals that are in the 9 to 5 club and no confrontation club, they never do that. So when they threaten to do it, like the speaker's race, well, we're just not going to vote for the person you put up. Okay, well, we'll be here when you decide that you're ready to come around, because we've already done this a bunch of times. We're conditioned for this. We're bred for this. We have already endured all your criticism of, well, you just have to go along, perfect is the enemy of the good, all the cliches that we hear that force us to do things that we disagree with, that over the last 50 years have slowly dismantled and destroyed our country. We're sick of it.
Congressman Scott Perry is with us. He is the representative of Pennsylvania's 10th District. He is the head of the House Freedom Caucus. Jim Jordan was shot down after 2 or 3 different votes by 20-some Republicans, and it was so funny throughout it. I kept thinking of you because they kept referring to him as the founder of the Freedom Caucus. I mean, they just could not underline that enough, that he was toxic somehow because of his affiliation. Now, I don't know Mike Johnson's affiliation with Freedom Caucus, if any, but I don't see him as any less conservative than most of you guys, is he?
No, he's not less conservative, and that's the wonderful thing. And just to let you know that Freedom Caucus members support incoming members that we see as potential Freedom Caucus attitude, so to speak, and policy thought. And we supported Mike Johnson as generally Freedom Caucus members, as individuals. We supported him in his race to get to Congress and courted him to join the Freedom Caucus. Now, over time, eventually he went the route of what's called the Republican Study Committee, which I would consider Freedom Caucus light. But he is a true conservative, and I would kind of offer this to you, Chris. What we have now is a speaker who is conservative to his core. It's his belief, where in the past we always had to drag our speaker to the conservative cause. They would come there eventually, sometimes and often reluctantly. They kind of saw, the value proposition in being conservative, but it wasn't who they were inherently. And so it was always work to get them to the position and then to try and hold them to the position and keep them fighting for the position. In Mike Johnson, we have a guy who wakes up every day, knows the good Lord is why America exists, and says, we shouldn't be spending money that we don't have. Obviously, bringing in people to the country that haven't been vetted in untold numbers is not good for America. And, things that are generally thought of as conservative, like our daughters shouldn't have to be forced to be showering in the locker room with some guy who says he wants to be a girl. That just doesn't seem right to me. Mike Johnson wakes up intuitively knowing that his positions are our positions. And so I think we're 100% ahead of the game to where we were just 3 weeks ago.
And I have been telling people who seem to kind of want to find fault right away, because that's, sort of the natural place of a lot of Republican voters right now, is suspicion of the party at large. You understand it because there's been a lot of cause for people to be suspicious in the past. Is there reason for anyone to be suspicious of Mike Johnson? I guess he made kind of an offhanded comment about of course, we continue to support Ukraine funding with conditions. That made some people mad. Until he offers up something that suggests to me he's not a conservative, I'm willing to, anything he said or whatever, I'll wait till a vote is cast that I disagree with. I haven't seen it so far. I mean, are there things he's going to have to do, like a CR, that may tick off conservatives like us, just to make things go? Or, I mean, what's reality here for him?
Reality is that we've put this quarterback in, not in the fourth quarter, but at the end of overtime. And, the other quarterback has screwed up the game entirely. We're on we're on our goal line, and the clock is running out. And, somehow everybody thinks that this guy's going to make 3 touchdowns in about a minute and a half, and they're going to be mad at him if he doesn't. So, he's been handed this situation, and he's got to make the best of it. And he's got to make the best of it with the team that he has. And remember, the team that he has helped screw all this stuff up and was generally, in agreement with screwing it up. And now we're saying, well, Johnson, we expect you to win the game under these circumstances. And we do expect him to win the game, Chris. That's the point. Yeah. But I think that all of us have to, we're helping him get there. We understand that Ukraine is hanging out there. And let's remember that the Senate is undercutting him every single day. And when I say the Senate, I'm not talking about Chuck Schumer. I'm talking about our own team over there that is undercutting Mike Johnson. And if there's any doubt who the leader of the Republican Party is now, other than Donald Trump, of the only elected leader or the true elected leader is not Mitch McConnell. It is Mike Johnson now. So he's going to go to the Senate today. You know this. He's going to go to the Senate today to their steering committee meeting and tell them, no, we're not going to have a blank check for Ukraine. And no, we're not going to include Israel with Ukraine because it's two different things. And, oh, by the way, no, we're not giving you any of this stuff without dealing with the border. There's a new sheriff in town, and your guys are all going to have to get right with it. And I know that we have bills to pass on spending. We haven't passed them all. But guess what? You people in the Senate haven't passed one of them. So shut your mouth and get to work. And when you do something, then you can come to the table. That's the message that has to be delivered today. And we conservatives, rightly so, expect Mike Johnson to do it. That's why we elected him as Speaker. That's why we asked for a change in the status quo, and that's what a change in the status quo looks like.
Does he have the magic stuff to get behind closed doors with the Senate and can make a convincing case? Or, I mean, I know he'll use a softer hand than what you just described, but that's effectively his message. Don't expect us to just rubber stamp joint spending for Ukraine and Israel. We're not doing it. So what does we're not doing it mean? We're literally willing to shut it down if that's what you insist on?
Well, I hope we don't have to shut it down, but that is the power of the purse. And while I stood next to a senator last week during the vote for Johnson as Speaker, and it was asked about a CR, and I said, there's no way we ever send over a clean CR. We're not doing that. We'll send something over as a stopgap measure that includes a debt commission, that includes a reduction in spending, something that changes the trajectory, but don't expect a clean CR. And he said to me, he goes, well, the Senate won't pass anything other than a clean CR. And I said, well, too bad for you, because we're not passing that. So we're tired of somehow there's only one body in Washington, D.C., and allegedly it's the Senate. We're sick of that. That's the status quo. And by the way, there's 435 of us. There's only, 100 of you people over there. So, again, until you've done any work, shut your mouth and get onto the train here, because the train is running.
I tell you what, I really hope that's where this stays, because it does seem in the Senate there's not a dime's worth of difference between the Democrat position and the Republican leadership position. There's some great senators, Republican senators, but it's as though the Senate Republicans don't exist anymore as a voice. It's really something.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It is the uniparty. It is the swamp. And I will tell you, it is a gamble, but the American people win. Some win either way, and this is the win. We either change the status quo and get these actual spending bills done. That process hasn't happened since 1996, or the whole thing blows up, and the senators that blew it up are revealed to the American people as the grifters and liars that they are.
And for the remainder of Johnson's tenure here, as you head into 2024, I know, it's a tenuous, and small lead that Republicans enjoy in terms of control of the House. How do you guys view 2024? I mean, I know you've got business to tend to before you start talking about elections, but how are you viewing it? Can you hang on to majority next fall?
I don't see it as hanging on. I see the Johnson move as a necessary requirement so that we can earn the respect and the vote and the trust and confidence of the American people by actually doing something, as opposed to the theater where we just say things and don't do anything that makes a difference. And I just go back to your opening where Speaker McCarthy said the first thing we're going to do is repeal these 80,000 IRS agents. Well, if we repeal them, how come we can go to that account that still exists and use it to pay for aid and support for our friends and our allies in Israel? It's because it still exists, because we did nothing except lip service. If you really want to do something, it's going to require a confrontation, because these people in the Senate and on the left in the House want all this stuff and are not going to give it up willingly. You just can't pass a bill and say, well, now it's done and we move on, knowing that the Senate's not going to pass it and the president's not going to sign it. You need to attach these things that you're fighting for to these things that are moving, like the appropriations bills, like the Israel aid. You have to attach them to it and make them make a choice. Is it more important to support our allies in Israel and get rid of terrorists, or is it more important to you, Senator, leftist in Congress, to have IRS agents knocking on the doors of hardworking Americans that are just trying to pay their taxes? Which one's more important to you? You go sell it to the American people. Chris, you got to set these things up, and you got to go fight for them, or they're not going to happen.
It's brilliant. And in case people missed this, and maybe many did, you have tied a new bill out of the House. House Republicans released this week, $14.3 billion in emergency funding for Israel, while rescinding that exact same amount of IRS funding from the Inflation Reduction Act. This is a tit for tat. We will give Israel this money, but we're going to take it from what we wanted to allocate to the IRS and make the left defend it. I think it's genius. I love it.
It's how it should be. It's what the left always does to us, and we never return the favor, and it's why America keeps losing. It's because Republicans never want the confrontation. Like I said, as long as it happens between 9 and 5 and it's easy and nobody gets angry or upset, there's no cross words, and we don't have to go out in the media and talk about it, and we can just go to dinner and enjoy each other's company, we'll do it. Well, that's not how this works. If you want liberty, if you want a country that can afford to be a country, you're going to have to fight for it, because the other side doesn't care about either one of those things and erodes them every single day. And we just have to – none of us like it. We would rather not have to do this, but this is what it takes.
And you know Scott Perry is serious about his liberty because he leaves his Christmas lights up year-round. That's how serious about liberty he is. Congressman Scott Perry, the congressman representing 10th Congressional District of Pennsylvania. A real pleasure, sir. Thanks for your time. Well, look, he doesn't take any delight in it, but I have a feeling that somewhere in the corner of Mike's mind, he's a good man who would never say this aloud, but Mike Lindell at MyPillow might feel just a smidge of schadenfreude at the news that Bed Bath & Beyond has gone bankrupt. Yeah, the company that first threw Mike's pillows and products out of their store has now filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Well, I can tell you at MyPillow.com, they're anything but bankrupt. They are fantastic. They are high quality. They are doing well by their customers, and they don't need a retailer like Kohl's or Bed Bath & Beyond. Yes, they sold their products and sold them well until politics got in the way, so Mike just took it all online, and MyPillow.com is roaring. He also sells at his store the My Coffee, which I drink now and love, and I hope you'll go online and order all of it. And I hope you'll use my name, Chris Podcast, when you do it. If you go to Chris Podcast as your promo code when you go to MyPillow.com, Chris Podcast, you'll get up to 80% on a lot on that website. You'll get discounts regardless, but particularly some of the clearance stuff, you'll save ridiculous money. So please use the promo code Chris Podcast when you order, and I do hope you do. We have an entire bed outfitted with MyPillow stuff now. We've got the sheets, we've got the blanket, we've got the pillows. Even Dean has his own MyPillow dog bed. Like I said, I drink the MyPillow, or it's not MyPillow coffee. It's called My Coffee. I keep screwing that up. That would be weird if it was pillow coffee. No, it's coffee, which I sip sometimes while leaning against MyPillow. The MyPillow 2.0, the mattress topper, which is like a brand new mattress without paying for a brand new mattress. You know, he'll ship that mattress topper to you for free if you use my promo code Chris Podcast right now. It's covered in that new 2.0 fabric. So are his pillows that keep you cool all night long. He'll send you a second MyPillow 2.0 if you use my promo code Chris Podcast. For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, it's true. He's made me a believer. Dean, my dog, as well. The slippers, the towels, the bed sheets, the pajamas, and so much more. And yes, even the coffee. Go to MyPillow.com. Use the promo code Chris Podcast and save, or call today 800-932-5056. 800-932-5056. Who needs Bed Bath & Beyond anyway? MyPillow.com, promo code Chris Podcast. Julie Kelly is at Substack almost exclusively now. I mean, you see her still doing interviews, but if you want to read her work, you really have to go to Substack to find it all. juliekelly.substack.com. You can follow her on X as well, Julie_Kelly, the number 2. She has written in extensive detail about J6 prisoners. She has written an extensive detail about many court cases, not only surrounding them, but now she's almost become a courtroom reporter of sorts during the Donald Trump saga, and there are many. She's really going to become one of the most reliable sources for us as we try to sort through all of these things. I mean, there's Georgia, there's the documents case, there's D.C., there's the phony stuff in Manhattan. It's all phony, but also out in Colorado, not to be forgotten, they're trying to keep him off the ballot entirely in Colorado. So there's lots bubbling at once, Julie.
There is, and it is hard to kind of track that. And of course, I still want to cover what's happening to these January 6th defendants. I mean, these are the most persecuted of all. Of course, what's happening to Donald Trump in all of these cases is just egregious and unprecedented and such an abuse of power and the law. But those same forces, Chris, as you know, have been rained down on the head of really defenseless Americans now, with more than 1,100 and counting January 6 defendants, still going to trial, still being arrested, still being charged, and of course, still being sent to prison for their involvement in January 6.
What do you make of these sleazeball judges? This Shaka Khan lady and this white-haired grimacing goofball in Manhattan. What of these people? They're radical Obama types, right?
They're radical. They have a grudge. They don't really try to hide their contempt for Donald Trump or his supporters and voters. I've seen this in court proceedings in Washington, D.C. against January 6th defendants now for, going on 3 years. At first, you could call in and hear it. Now I get to see it in person. And they don't even try to hide it. And the real danger, Chris, is that these judges do it with impunity because they know that there's no accountability. When was the last time Congress exercised its constitutional authority in impeaching a federal judge? I can't even tell you. I bet it's been decades. So there are so many. I couldn't even tell you the top 5, and this would include Trump judges as well, on the D.C. District Court, who should immediately be hauled before the American people and explain what they've done to these individuals and now to Donald Trump. Of course, Tanya Chutkan, who's handling the January 6th case in D.C., is one of them. But look, what she has done and said to January 6th defendants alone should force her to recuse. Of course, they filed a recusal motion. She denied it. There's just no accountability. And, of course, they can go to the circuit court, which is the appellate court in these jurisdictions. But the D.C. Circuit Court is loaded with Obama appointees. So they've really been, for the most part, a rubber stamp for all of these judges, what they've decided in J6 cases. So it's very frustrating. I call it the legal and judicial circle of hell, especially in Washington, D.C. There's no escaping what these defendants and now Donald Trump and his associates, Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, for example, who also were charged in that venue. There's no escaping it. It's really torment, and it just never fails to really break my heart to see what these people, the system that they're trapped in.
You cover the nitty gritty. I mean, you're in the weeds of it all the time, and I talk about it often from kind of a oversight view, 30,000 feet, and we talk about the politics of it. I read yesterday somebody lamented something like Trump can't or isn't really talking about the nuts and bolts of Israel and Hamas. And I thought to myself, well, he first of all, he is. I mean, if you follow him on social media and you listen to some of his speeches, most of the media doesn't. They purposely ignore it. But also, you would be forgiven if you thought Trump doesn't talk about anything but legal proceedings, because by design, that's all they want anybody to be talking about when it comes to Trump is courtrooms, not issues or policy.
Well, it is sort of ridiculous for any of his presidential opponents in the Republican primary to condemn him or criticize him for not being on the campaign trail. Do they not know that he's been sitting in a New York courtroom for the past 2 weeks? Now this judge hauling in his children as part of this spectacle. Instead of criticizing him for not being on the campaign trail, are you not paying attention to the world? These candidates should be part of the public conversation of what this legal and judicial system in all of these areas are doing to Donald Trump. Do they think they're going to be immune from this? Do they think that this entire apparatus, this vengeful, reckless, abusive apparatus is going to be shut down if Donald Trump is not the president or candidate? Of course it's not. they're going to sharpen their knives against whoever is the next Republican president. So I think it's really counterproductive to see that happening in the Republican Party. But look, Chris, you and I have talked about this, and I'm so grateful to you for helping me early on bring this story to your listeners, because not a lot of people would touch this January 6th issue. And you were one of the first, and I'm so grateful. But there is no excuse for the near silence, still now 3 years later, by Republican lawmakers or leaders or presidential candidates on what's happening to innocent Americans, as I said, being abused by the system as well. And yes, I have gone to these court proceedings. I was at the gag order hearing 2 weeks ago in Judge Chutkin's courtroom, and then I got to go see a few other hearings. I watched, a Reagan-appointed judge who can't even get out of his seat, Chris, sentence a mother of 8 to 57 months in prison.
Good grief.
So this extends far beyond Donald Trump or even the presidential election.
And do you feel dispirited when you watch it? Because it sounds dispiriting. I don't know how you feel like. Look, we've talked about this before. There are a lot of people who maybe even like Trump and liked his presidency, but just feel like, look, it's a buzzsaw now. They're going to be successful in taking him out. They're coming at him every which way until they can cut him down to size, and he will be stopped one way or the other. Figure some Republican voters, and as such, they say that is why then we must cut bait and go with DeSantis or Haley or whomever. And you would say to them what?
I would say that that's foolish, and it's ignorant, and it's born out of a place, I think, of wishful thinking. I think that there are so many Americans, and I urge people to go check out Dinesh D'Souza's film, Police State.
Yes.
There are a lot of Americans, especially on the right, Chris, who don't want to believe that this is happening, who want to believe this is happening only because of Donald Trump. They don't want to acknowledge the armed pre-dawn FBI raids against men who walked inside the Capitol for 10 minutes, committed no violent crime, but yet have their family, their community, and of course their lives, their livelihood destroyed by Merrick Garland's vengeful, retaliatory Department of Justice. I mean, it's not just happening to Trump, but people on the right want to believe, for whatever reason still, that the judiciary is legitimate, the Department of Justice is salvageable, the FBI really is filled with good guys except for the top, like Chris Wray. That's simply not the case. And that's why people need to come to terms with it. They need to pressure their lawmakers in Congress to do more about this. And they need to call out Republicans, whether they're running for president or for local office, that this poses the greatest danger to the security and the future of America, not what's happening overseas, but what is happening right here, because this is a very dangerous trajectory we're on, and I don't see a lot of hope of it stopping anytime soon, if at all.
To be clear, people have brought this up to me before, and I keep meaning to ask you, and I forget, but I've heard it a couple of times since we talked. When McCarthy was still Speaker, one of the first things he did was give you and a couple of others access to the tapes of January 6th, surveillance footage inside the building in the Capitol. I still read people that act or say that you weren't privy to all of it or didn't get to see all of it, that all of it hasn't been released. And with McCarthy's ouster and now Mike Johnson, will he pledge to release it all? How much is there to see still, or have you seen it all? What is the truth of that?
Well, there's no way to see it all, Chris. After I went there and I was given access and I saw the terminals, you're talking about close to 1,000 cameras, all different angles inside and outside, just the Capitol, but Capitol grounds for different times starting on January 5th all the way into the 7th. So there's no way to see it all. But I will tell you, Kevin McCarthy did not fulfill his pledge. And I said that, a few months into the process of my having access to it. I felt like this was a way to initiate the media to kind of test out the system, how this was going to be done. They did not put forward a platform where Americans can access this and they can look at different areas and perhaps find things that just a handful of journalists we don't have the bandwidth to do it. So
we're saying sorry to interrupt, you're saying the argument really is not so much allowing journalists, but rather make this public for all to comb through.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. It needs to be released on a platform where anyone can go look at any camera angle at any time. It's very complicated. I understood from the beginning that it was going to be a challenging task, more difficult than I thought. I mean, this is something I first wrote about in May of 2021 when DOJ disclosed that they had this video. But once I saw the terminals, I saw how complicated. But look, now at 9 months later, there's no excuse for not figuring out a way to make all of the records available. Where's the January 6th committee? What happened to the weaponization committee? We were told that was going to be like the next church committee and a full vetting of the weaponization of DOJ and FBI. I think there's been some really good things coming forward. But where are nighttime televised hearings, dragging in these line prosecutors, dragging in some of these judges, forcing them to explain how they're weaponizing the law? Real quick, Chris, I have a big piece up at Real Clear Investigations on this obstruction of an official proceeding felony. This is part of what I'm talking about, the long-term consequences of codifying these really vague laws and turning them into ways to criminalize political dissent. This 1512C2, the post-Enron law, I've talked about, you and I have talked about more than 300 defendants, including Trump, face this charge. I explain the basis of how DOJ has weaponized this. It's now had a split decision in 2 appellate court rulings. It's possibly headed to the Supreme Court. So it's really important for people to pay attention. If the Supreme Court does not reverse how DOJ has used this is the way that the Democrats in federal jurisdictions will criminalize political dissent. Now, for Republicans, not Democrats, of course, right? That didn't happen to Jamal Bowman, for example.
Yeah.
But I think it's important, too, Chris, as we talk about this, that people understand the backstories, how the law is being weaponized, and how it can come for all of us.
I think, if I'll speak for myself, when I hear you speak about these things, I start to feel like we're engaged in lawfare to such a degree. I can see quickly where people feel like, well, what the hell's an election matter at this point? People can feel so defeated, like the law will just choke us to death. They will use the law and the DOJ to choke us to death. Elections be damned. Where is Julie Kelly with that?
I mean, I sort of am there because, this is what I hear. I was talking to a friend yesterday. She's like, you really think they're going to let Trump win again? And I'm like, well, I don't think they're going to let any Republican win, but I still think he probably has a better chance of defeating Biden or whoever the Democrat is. But this was part and parcel of January 6th, Chris, is to turn any challenge into the election, any criticism of voting habits or voting laws. If you want to restrict or you want to enforce election integrity, that means you're an insurrectionist,
yes,
right?
Yes.
I mean, we saw this with Mike Johnson. They called him an insurrectionist because, so anyway, yes, that's a very defeating, but we still have to push forward. That is one of the last little remaining pieces of power that we have. And as defeating as it seems, everyone needs to buckle up. I'll tell you, I walk out of those courtrooms and I'm like, look, this is not the American that my ancestors sacrificed for. And I'm not going to walk out of a courtroom of Judge Tanya Chutkin or Chris Cooper or Amit Mehta or Tim Kelly, any of them, and feel like they're going to get the best of us. And that, I think, motivates me, and it should motivate all of us.
Beautifully said. She does tremendous work that you really ought to read. Real Clear Investigations is where one of her latest pieces is, but everything she writes almost daily. JulieKelly.substack.com. Sign up and subscribe so you don't miss anything she's reporting on. And she's usually there, often on the ground. It's so funny. I mean, I remember sitting at dinner with you a couple of years ago, and I would never have thought that you would become like one of the great courtroom reporters. But here you are. It's really, I mean, it's amazing because you've done it all yourself.
You drank too much wine.
No, I'm proud of you. I mean, you do work that, like, I don't think, like you said, I don't know if most people don't have the bandwidth or the interest, but you do work people just can't do on their own right now. So thank you.
As I say, Chris, I'm like, what did I do to deserve this? But I do, as tough as it is, I do consider it an honor to be covering this. And so in its service not just to my country, but on behalf of all these people whose lives are being destroyed. And I, again, want to thank you for helping to emphasize this from the very beginning.
We've been the beneficiaries. JulieKelly.substack.com. Thank you, Julie.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.